We arrived to a clock with teeth. I was Admiral Mara Vance, flag aboard Horizon's wake, drifting bow first toward the Toll Barreth Gate. The screen over my chair showed an enemy ultimatum timer blinking from the blockade line, Weirzo 1938. The Harrow Compact's Praetor Quell demanded our relief convoy withdraw to the jump rim, or he would vent 20 captured grain tenders with their civilian crews. The flux coils hummed under my boots like a low storm, and the air held that ion bitter scent of ships at high readiness. Kestrel. Status on the convoy, I asked. Eyes on the distant glitter that was 40 hungry worlds, hope rationed into barges. Alive. Admiral, the fleet mind replied, voice calm and bell clear. Transponder hearts still beating. Compact tugs chained them to the inner cordon. Scuttlers armed. Deadman codes nested beneath proximity locks. Timer now, Commander J. Lynn said quietly. Year 0, 1903. Pulsed in the corner. A cold metronome against the soft hiss of coolant and the faint tick-tick of my suit's pulse readout. Praetor Quell's doctrine was simple: never negotiate, issue terms, punish the first refusal loudly enough that none would test you twice. He had written that doctrine in other people's blood, and the galaxy had learned to step wide. But hunger steps straight when steps run out. Our convoy had crossed anyway. Signal from the compact. Ensign Rafi Kadir said, his console painting my cheek in green-gold reflections. Audio and text. He repeats full withdrawal to the outer rim within 19 minutes, or he kills everyone in the chain. Put him on, I said. Praetor Quell's face filled a third of the forward wall, austere stylized scars. Eyes like frost. Admiral Vance, he said, this is not personal. It is precedent. Reverse course. Every second you remain is a choice to kill your own. Your fleet is fast. Your mercy can be faster. I let the silence carry the thrum of our hull back to him. You've taken unarmed ships hostage, I said. That's not precedent. That's cowardice masquerading as law. They crossed a line. He replied, my duty is to iron that line flat. 18 minutes. Cut. I told comms. And Rafi did. Sweat slicked the seal at my neck. The deck shivered as our point defense turrets cycled to hot. On my private link, the fleet's heartbeat came through a tapestry of ranges, vectors, fuel margins, heat budgets. Every cruiser a glowing bead on a map stitched by light. We will not trade lives for obedience. I said it under my breath and let the words sit in my chest like a promise. Options, I said. Kestrel's projection bloomed above the tactical table. His blockade is 3 layers. The AI said. Outer pickets scattered broad to catch a feint. Inner guard ships aboard the tenders. Middle line is where the guns live, missile barges and shield haulers. If we charge the middle line, we can cut. But casualties among hostages approach certainty. So not that, Jay said, voice tight. Not that, I agreed. Alternative, deception. Lieutenant Ortega said from tactics, thumb tapping his slate. Saturate their targeting with false signatures. Drift a pocket of dark through the cordon. Snatch the tenders under a moving shadow. We'd need more skin-on-skin reflectors than we have. Not reflectors, Kestrel said. Polar sails. Freight holds are full of relief polymer. We can rig a mirror lattice from food wrap and cargo frames. The word mirror cut cold through my head, and I felt the tug of a past lesson reflect force, and you must carry its heat. Heat sink. We turn his own shields into an umbrella, Kestrel said. The lattice will borrow the angle of his emitters and fold our signature into his. He will not fire on himself, not on public sight. Timer, Jay said, You're 1721, then how 1720 steady as a heartbeat? Before we moved the board, I asked for eyes beyond the war map. Bridge, give me crew channel 2. The wall split to a narrow pane showing the mess deck of the Corvette Primrose. A cook with flour on her sleeve pressed sealed buns into a crate labeled Tender 14. A junior tech whispered into his glove about buying his sister new lungs when the famine ended. A hydroponics hand checked the straps on a crate of seed, lifting each buckle twice. A medic slid his thumb across a worn coin and slipped it back into a pocket sewn crooked. A loader kissed a charm welded to his hard hat, then shrugged on exo braces. A pilot sketched a thawing lake on her knee with a grease pencil and smiled without teeth. The shot lingered on each face long enough for breath to mean something. This is what he's pressing on, I said. He thinks we are the ones who break when a clock ticks. He thinks mercy means turning away. It doesn't. Admiral, Ortega said, if we build the Lattice fast, we can reach them before he expects motion. Kestrel, how fast? 7 minutes to rig minimal viability if we strip 7 freighters and 3 destroyers for frames. The AI said. Full field in 10. The hull beneath my feet thrummed deeper as the fleet stood on its toes. Do it. I said, Ensign Kadir, send a single line back to the Praetor. We don't negotiate with clocks. Keep it dry. Raffi swallowed. Sent. Launch hummingbird decoys. I told Ortega. Have them look like cruisers pretending to be corvettes, pretending to be ice. A dozen points of light spat from our bays and arced into plots that looked wrong on purpose. The coolant hissed, a sweet metal smell rising through the vents. My chair shook once as a tug latched to an old cargo frame and tore it free. Rigging sails, Kestrel said. 15,000 square meters already up, folding angles to pull us inside their shield harmonics. The math is perilous, but sound. Jay, I said, you don't like this. I don't like gambling with a doctrine that kills civilians to prove a point, he said, but I like letting him write law with a trigger less. Good, I said. Keep disliking it. It'll keep us careful. The line between courage and folly is where we stand. Raffi looked at me. Ma'am, permission to say something personal. Ask. My mother is on one of those tenders. She sent a burst an hour ago. She made bread last night and said it smelled like the old city before it burned. You'll bring her home by following the plan. I said, not by staring at a clock. Eyes up, Ensign. He nodded, jaw tight, and the green wash of his screen shivered on his cheek as he returned to work. Kestrel, I said, show me the Compact's public channel. The ultimatum doctrine operated in glass. They loved witnesses. Across 1,000 subscriber nodes, we were a stream, a spectacle. Our fleet plotted, his timer ticked, and a world watched for either obedience or ash. Praetor Quell spoke into that open room again at 00:15:52. Admiral, he said, you are wasting lives with theater. Withdraw. We're building shade. I said back on the same open wave. You're going to feel it. I cut him before he could lace poison into the next sentence. The deck vibrated with the tug's labor, and heat crawled warm along the seam under my palms on the armrest. Somewhere aft, a pressure valve sang a half second and then was quiet. Mirror lattice minimal is standing, Kestrel said. It will not carry us if he turns his emitters hard inward, but he won't in public audience. His doctrine abhors friendly losses. Doctrine is a mask, Jay said. I know, I said, but he wears it too tight to take off in front of a crowd. Outer pickets shifting, Ortega said, voice alive. Their destroyers think our decoys are feints. They're angling to bite shadows. Ready the dark pocket, I said. We'll drift low and slow, shielded by his own glare. I can push a derelict signature ahead of us. Kestrel said, an old miner with a slag belly. He will not mind if that shadow goes places he would have denied us. Send it. We slid. The ship's motion was a suggestion under my boots, a long inhale as we fell into the angle of their shields. Through the forward pane, the cordon's light shivered like heat over desert stone. The timer rolled down Javerso 13:00:13:59. Do not mistake quiet for weakness. Threading, Kestrel said. Every muscle in me wanted to wave the fleet faster, but slow was safety. We hid in brilliance. We borrowed the geometry of his shield haulers and made ourselves a thin hush between two storms. The ion tang in the air sharpened. A subtle copper note joined it. The taste of hard-worked coils. Hummingbirds drawing fire, Ortega said. Their missiles are spitting nonsense into empty coordinates. One of ours just took sand, Jay said. Primrose reports scarring across port flares. Still in play. Cost logged, I said softly. They'll get a story to tell at mess. Admiral, Kestrel said. Voice thinner by a fraction. The lattice is holding, but heat is building. We are storing his refusal in our skin. We can bleed heat into the decoys, Ortega said. Do it. I said. Small trickles. If we shine, we're dead. We came up under Tender 12 first, its hull dull and worn. The camera zoom caught a line of painted hands on its flank, a child's mural of suns and grain. Harrow Marines clamped to its spine like ticks. A tug's umbilical ran to its belly, the cable fat with power and threat. The scuttlers were coded to pop that belly like a fruit if he twitched. Kestrel, I said, read their dead man. Proximity interlock on a 20-meter shell around the Marines. The AI said, break it, and it triggers. But the trigger runs through a checksum gate that queries the tug every 10th of a second. So the tug answers every question, Jay said. Unless the tug is too busy to hear questions, I said, or hears too much. Noise Ortega asked. Noise, I said. Raffi, whisper a harmonic into that line timed with their query. Not loud, just enough to ask 3 questions every time it expects one. Raffi's finger shook once and then steadied. On it. The cruel are always surprised by gentle hands that don't let go. We matched velocity. Our cutters extended thin arms with knives that sang at high frequency. The deck felt like a cat waiting to pounce. Sweat dripped once into my collar and crawled down between my shoulder blades. Now, Kestrel said, we cut the tug's umbilical in the half-second between 3 queries. The scuttler's gate waited for answer 4, didn't hear it, and didn't know whether to decide. While it hesitated, our boarding tethers slapped the tender's ribs. Marines spilled from our hatches like blue sparks and vanished into the tender's maintenance run. They'll fight, Jay said. They'll bleed, I said, but our orders are clear. I heard only fragments over the board, the bark and breath of men and women moving in tight spaces, the scrape of boots, the grunt when someone hit steel. A medic called for a gel pack. A Marine cursed softly when a shard went through her glove. Wounded but walking. She added. The air smelled suddenly of hot plastic and the sharp green of burst coolant. My teeth buzzed with the resonance of the cutter arms. Gate cut, Kestra said. Scuttlers disarmed. Marines are zip-tied to their own clamps. Tender 12 is ours. Pull it into the shadow, I said. Make it one more piece of umbrella. Prater is speaking, Raffi said. Mute him. We drifted to Tender 9 to 14 to 2 each time. The same dance, but with new bruises. On Tender 9, a compact trooper threw a blade and caught Ortega's squad leader under the chin guard. The man fell and rode the floor on his back, blinking up at strip lights, breathing hard through blood and relief. I'm still here, he said. I hate that song you like, another Marine replied, and hauled him up by his harness. On tender 2, a scuttler went half hot and spit sparks like angry rain, burning a deckhand's wrists. He knelt with his arms in a med wrap while his partner whispered the names of their children into the crown of his head until the shaking stilled. Timer, Jay said, because the word meant air. Incineraso 931. We need speed, the calculus in me muttered, but the voice that wore my name kept us slow. The compact's middle line began to fret. Their shield haulers changed phase 3 times in 30 seconds and settled back, uncertain. Public audiences puzzled. Kestrel reported, his fans are calling us tricksters. His jurists are calling us cowards. His merchants are calling their insurers. Good, I said. Give them something to argue about when they want to cheer for murder. All that noise cannot drown a single clear breath. Tender 6 is stubborn, Ortega said. Their tug captain is smart. She wrapped her umbilical in a Faraday coil and grounded it through the tender skin. Our harmonic won't echo. She hears 3 questions the way a mother hears 3 kids at once. Jay said, she can still answer them all. Then we teach her what quiet feels like, I said. Kestrel, borrow a sliver of their shield again. Bend it into a box around that coil. If we can make their own light, hush for 1 heartbeat. The gate hears nothing, and nothing is a safe answer. Kestrel finished. Attempting. The ship's hum shifted a hair. My tongue pressed to the roof of my mouth. Somewhere forward, a panel clanked as heating and cooling argued. The smell of ozone threaded through the already metal air. Hush in place, Kestrel said. Cutting. The umbilical fell like a dead snake. Our knives sang. Our Marines moved. Scuttlers safe. Ortega said. Exhaling. We're good. Tenders under shade. Jay said, he knows. The forward pane brightened, not with weapon fire, but with light. Every ship in the middle line flared their shields to full and opened them inward to look for us. He made the oldest mistake. He confused brightness with sight. The Lattice drank his glare and showed us a road. Admiral, Raffi said softly. Message from my mother. It piggybacked a diagnostic on Tender 14's fuel feed. I can smell oranges. I could smell them too then. Ghost oranges, because memory lives in noses more than eyes. Tell her to keep breathing. I said. We're not done. War without witness is easy. War with witness demands a soul. Praetor Quell is requesting private channel, Kestrel said. Give him 1 line. I said. You're clever, Quell said. But cleverness is not policy. You confused policy with a cudgel, I replied. You held starving ships at gunpoint. You're stealing them, he said. I warned you. 8 minutes. Then do it. I said. And let him hear the absolute in it. Show them who you are. I clicked private off. He would not. The doctrine needed eyes. He would not fire inside his own glare while the galaxy watched. His hands were tied by the ropes he had tied for us. We gathered the tenders into our hush until they were a raft beneath us. Each small ship a word in a sentence that said, no. Casualties, I asked. 11 wounded. Ortega said. 1 serious. Everyone breathing. Cost recorded, Jay murmured. We exhaled together. The timer rolled to 000711. The hull's vibration leveled into a purr, though every part of me still wanted to spring. We should go, Jay said. Run now that we have them. He'll chase, but we'll be light years away before his middle line finds its hands. Kestrel said. We could, but there is an alternative. Of course there was. The conflict triangle was alive between my ribs, my line, Kestrel's calculus, Quell's doctrine. If we ran, we saved our own and left the doctrine intact. He would do this again at the next gate, to someone else with fewer sails and less stubborn lungs. What do you propose? I asked. His corridor is an invitation to flee. Kestrel said, It is also a funnel. He expects prey to sprint. But funnels work both ways if you turn them inside out. Trap flip, Ortega said, half in awe. Make his safe lane the place he does not want to be. We lure his middle line into the corridor while we are still slow, Kestrel said, voice the patience of math. We show him a stagger, a false leak in our shade. He will attempt to tighten the net to score the spectacle he craves. When his haulers are committed, we change the phase of our lattice and return his glare not into us, but into his own shield bellies. He'll have to choose between his doctrine and his hulls. Jay said, He won't like choosing. He will have to choose publicly, I said. And the cost will be on his side of the scale this time. The bay vents exhaled cool air. I felt the temperature drop a fraction along my wrists. The taste of copper faded, replaced by something almost sterile, like fresh water over steel. Before we set the hook, I opened Crew Channel 2 again. The shot came from a maintenance crawl under our dorsal coil. A pair of young sailors traded half a ration of dried mango and laughed without sound, their fingers touching just once as if to say, Don't blink. The camera panned past a rack of repair drones, paused on an old patch stitched into the bulkhead, a kite above a field, and a hand holding the string. In the med bay, the wounded squad leader from Primrose tried to sit and failed, then grinned at the medic's scowl and lay back down obediently. In a lifeboat bay, an engineer put his forehead to the glass and breathed a single fog circle, then wiped it away and went back to checking clamps. Our kindness was not soft. It had edges sharp enough to make room. The door they built for fear will be our way through. Kestrel, I said, build me the inside out. Calculating phases. The AI said, the lattice will have to hum at a harmonic that will sting. Ear protection recommended for close compartments. I can soften it by 3 decibels. I've heard worse songs, Ortega said. Prater is moving, Rafi said. Middle line advancing. He smells weakness. Give him a whiff, I said. Leak a whisper of heat on the port edge. Not a flare. A sigh. Done, Kestrel said. The hull fluttered, a shiver like an animal shaking off rain. I heard the faintest singing. Metal tired, but not failing. The coolant lines gave a high keening note and settled. The forward wall showed the middle line's advanced shield haulers shouldering in, missile barges angling a touch too eagerly. Now, Kestrel said, we wove. The lattice folded its angles. A cat's cradle gone elegant. His glare found a new home, the bellies of his haulers flushed white with their own light. Their shield generators cried in frequencies half heard, and heat bled from their flanks in visible ripples. He paused. We could all feel that tiny hesitation travel the net like a chill. Doctrine hates uncertainty because certainty is its brand. Public audience is confused, Kestrel said. They see his line brightening in a way that looks wrong. Prater, I said into the open channel, you can pull back your haulers. No one will think less of you for saving your people. You do not set my scale, he said, and there was the smallest crack in the ice of his voice. Your mask cannot breathe for you. He did not pull them. He wanted the corridor victory. He pushed harder and forced more of his own light into the trap we had set for him. His haulers' readings climbed. 2 technical officers on his side faces I did not know worked frantically in the glow of failing panels. Kestrel, I asked, His shield harmonics are 5% from shutter failure on the inner bank. The AI said, if he widens the corridor by 3 degrees, he relieves the pressure and we lose the bounce. Or he narrows it, Jay said, and makes it worse. He won't narrow while eyes watch, I said. He'll feign adjustment and pray we blink. As if to spite me, the corridor narrowed by 1 degree. The forward pane showed it plainly, the walls drawing in like a throat. He is more committed to doctrine than witness, Kestrel murmured. Then we will hand him a different witness, I said. Raffi, open a line to his hauler captains, not to him. Patch through the public channel. Plain language. Raffi's hands moved. Open. This is Admiral Vance, I said evenly. Your shield harmonics are touching failure. Your praetor has placed you inside a mirror you cannot see. Widen your corridor 3 degrees and live. Stay, and you will cook. Admiral, Jay whispered. We can't speak only to thrones, I said. Sometimes you speak to hands. For a beat. Nothing. Then a woman's voice came tight and furious. This is Hauler 2. Confirm the reading. Confirmed, Kestrel said on the line. Your inner bank is at stress threshold. Your scuttler ties are wound through a saturated node. Praetor orders us to hold, another voice snapped. You can hold for your honor, I said, or move for your lives. Choose fast. Be brave enough to refuse the wrong order. Hauler 2 widened 3 degrees. Her bubble cooled a whisper, just enough to break the cascade. The others hesitated. Then Hauler 5 swung 1. Then Hauler 7 2. Quell's voice flooded the channel then, loud as thunder in a valley. All haulers hold corridor, he barked. Disregard foreign command. This is murder. Hauler 2 said to him, yours or ours. Hold, he said again. And it sounded like someone arguing with a river. We did not grin. We did not gloat. We folded again. The mirror lattice, the lattice I refused to name aloud, just now ate his glare and showed him his own decision. The air on our bridge grew warmer by a breath, then cooler as the vents added effort. A drop of sweat slid down Ortega's temple and left a line like a road. Admiral, Kestrel said, we can take them all and run. Or we can make this a lesson that brands. I looked at the timer 0312. Lesson, I said. But we do not break their ships. We break their certainty. We drifted forward deliberately slow, tenders tight, fleet spaced like the beads of a careful prayer. The hull's vibration eased to a steady hum beneath my boots. My chair's arm was warm under my hand, and my other hand was colder where I had not remembered to move it. Midway through, mid-breath, I remembered a note pinned to a briefing wall back on Far Ledger Station. I heard my old CO's chalk against a board. We teach by numbers and remember by ledgers, never by callers. Put that on the public banner, I said suddenly to Raffi, as a footer under every image of this corridor. Yes, Admiral, he said, and the words went out, plain as bread and twice as nourishing. They cannot chain what stands up to walk. Praetor Quell's face returned to the wall. He had not sweated until now. A bead glowed on his temple and traced a lonely path. You think you can shame me, he said. I am beyond your judgment. No, I said quietly. You're exactly where judgment lives. You wrote your law on a window so everyone could admire how straight it was. Now you don't like the reflection. I could taste ozone again. Faint, but present. The coolant hiss came and went so softly it was almost wishful thinking. I kept breathing. Admiral, Jay said, the convoy masters are asking permission to speak. Patch, I said. Voices like a choir, but off-key in the best way came through. We can maintain current vector, said one. We have elders strapped in, said another. We have sourdough starters, said a third, trying to make a joke and almost making me cry. Keep your shade, said a fourth. Whatever this feels like, keep doing it. This feels like holding someone's hand through a tunnel, I said. You do the walking and I'll do the lights. Do not call it a tunnel if there is sky at the end. Quell took a step back from his camera and returned with a different mask on his face. This corridor is closed, he said, and threw a switch. The corridor edge collapsed inward another 2 degrees. Haulers are about to scream, Kestrel said, but there was no panic in the AI's voice. We can reverse once more and give them slack if we give up 2 tenders. Names, I said. Tender 3 and Tender 11, Kestrel said. 11 is Kadir's mother. The ship's sound cut to a bell-toned quiet in my head. When my heart came back, it was very loud. Rafi, I said softly, I won't promise anything no one can honestly promise. We will try. Do your work. He nodded. Jaw iron. Ortega, I said, give me 2 black kites. He blinked. Decoys that look like tenders. Not just look. I said, steal 2 empty lifeboats. Paint them. Hang them on long lines with heat pods. When Quell tightens again, we slack the raft and let those 2 ride the edge. He sees silhouettes and believes what doctrine tells him to believe. You're going to lie to a liar, Jay said. I'm going to tell him a story he already wrote in his head. I said, we built the kites out of what we had and a bag of luck. The hull's song carried a new note while the drones welded hooks in vacuum. The air on the bridge felt thinner. Or maybe I had forgotten to breathe deep enough. Kites away, Ortega said. Prater narrowing. Rafi said. Slack, I said. The raft swayed. The kites drifted to the corridor wall like exhausted swimmers. On screen. They were tenders the way a shadow is a body. Quell's doctrine needed these sacrifices to prove we feared him. And doctrine is greedy. He closed his fist. The wall kissed the kites, and the kites burst not with lives, but with heat and light enough to tell a good lie. Gas hissed like snakes leaving a hole. The public channel howled and then stuttered as moderators tried to handle 10,000 simultaneous breathless reports. Rafi choked a sound and killed it in his throat. Mother. Tender 11 intact. Kestrel answered before he could fall apart. 3's alive. Minor hull pitting. Cost, Jay said. 2 drones gone. Lifeboats lost. 9 burns treated. 1 sprained knee, Ortega said automatically, voice halfway to prayer. I'll send her a letter that her son did his job better than any map could demand. Rafi stared at his screen like it was holy. She says oranges. He whispered. She can still smell oranges. Your lies are not as strong as our care. We were nearly through the corridor now. The haulers were boiling, but living. Quell faced a choice widen and watch us go, or narrow and cook his own. History does not love honest men as much as storytellers say, but sometimes even a man who loves his doctrine more than his people loves his reputation most of all. Admiral, Kestrel said. His right hand wavered. He will widen. He wants to claim mercy. Then we let him. I said. And we make him say it out loud. Public channel open, Rafi said softly. Praetor Quell addressed the galaxy. I am not a butcher, he said. This corridor widens to avoid collateral effects caused by foreign manipulation. You can call it whatever keeps your sleep, I said to him. And then to everyone else. We will proceed at 1/4 and keep our convoy under shade until the famine world receives its bread. We will not fire unless fired upon. Admiral, Jay said low so only the bridge could hear. We could take the lesson now and run. Or we can set the second hook. The skin between my shoulder blades tightened. Second hook. I said, we only rewrite a doctrine by making the cost public and owned. System scale trap. Kestrel said. Voice, a patient river. If we lead his middle line toward the Berenice drift and invite them to press us again, we can turn the drift's dust into a fog that reveals his emissions. His own rules will make him the example he wanted us to be. Berenice is a fuel thief, Ortega said. We'll lose reserves. We lose time and fuel, Jay said. We gain a precedent. I'll trade kerosene for law any day, I said. The road ahead is longer than their threats. Before we threw for the drift, I asked for one more look at faces. The screen showed a family grandmother, daughter, grandchild strapped into hammocks on Tender 14. The child was asleep with a cheek stuck to a bread wrapper. The grandmother stroked hair with the softness of someone who had lived long enough to know exactly how precious that small moment was. On Primrose, the cook with flour on her sleeve handed a bun to the wounded man and refused to be paid. In engineering, a senior tech traced a crack in a panel with a marker and wrote tomorrow next to it with a tiny smile. We changed vector. The hum underfoot grew teeth again as coils took new load. Heat crept back into the armrest and along the inside of my elbow. My mouth tasted like the inside of a battery for a heartbeat, and then cleared. Praetor Quell is following, Kestrel said. He wants a second act. Give him a stage, I said. Make it a mirror where the world watches him watching himself. Admiral J said. Permission to speak as a human first, officer second. Granted. Thank you for not letting the clock make you stupid. He said, thank you for not letting me pretend caution is always a virtue. I said, slow is not surrender when you are drawing a map. We slipped along the edge of the drift. Dust on screen looked like spilled milk under starlight. Our sensors painted it as a field of numbers. Each grain a tiny lantern if you knew how to ask it to glow. Kestrel knew how. We seeded the cloud with signal threads that would light up only under the exact frequencies of the compact's inner shield bank. If Quell pressed again, the cloud would sing his name. Ortega, I said. We will need decoys spaced like mile markers. Already deploying, he said. Hummingbirds 2 through 8, with skins tuned to look like nervous escorts. Rafi, I said. If he threatens another timer, I want a countdown of our own ready. Not a threat, a schedule. At each marker, we will show the public what his pressure does to his own people. If he backs off, the show ends. Yes, Admiral, Rafi said. Script or plain? Plain. I said, no poetry. That's for after. The hull thrummed in a way I had come to love the sound of a ship answering a hand with trust. The vents cooled a shade more, pushing the last sweat from my hairline. My suit heartbeat steadied against my ribs like a teammate's palm. Admiral, Kestrel said. Softer. This will cost us fuel we might wish we had later. And crew will carry burns that will ache in rain on shore leave. We aren't buying glory, I said. We're buying a future where this doctrine dies in daylight. Then the cost is fair, Kestrel said, and I thought I heard something like pride in a voice built from math. The price of decency is paid in advance. Praetor Quell's face returned at Vrokite Twansuirvo, not his timer, ours. Admiral Vance, he said. You are delaying commerce. You are destabilizing a sector lane. You are destabilizing what it means to be a neighbor. I said. We're going to demonstrate something. Publicly. At each marker you press, the drift will answer with your own heat. The audience can decide what they think about men who cook their crews. You threaten, he said. I mirror, I said. You do the rest. I do not recognize your court, he said. More brittle now. Courts aren't where law lives, I said. People are. He cut the channel. He would come anyway. Doctrine doesn't know how to stop. We took position with the convoy nested tight. The dust drifted like a slow river ahead. Our own exhaust heat made nervous eddies that read as tiny ripples on the board. My hand smelled faintly like the leather wrap of the armrest. A detail as small and grounding as the ship's cat, once curling on my lap between battles. Marker 1 set. Kestrel said, "If he presses, the field will flicker the way lightning crawls under skin." "Let him write with his own hand," I murmured. The deck creaked only a soundboard quirk, but it made everyone's shoulders jump half an inch. Ortega's reflection in the glass looked like a ghost. He smiled at himself and didn't look away. "Praetor line accelerating," Rafi said, voice steady. "Middle ship spooling. He wants to lean." "Then lean," I said. He leaned. The dust lit in soft veins under his haulers, a gentle illumination that looked almost beautiful unless you knew what it meant. Public chat flooded with question marks, then with long lines of text in languages I could not read. Someone supercut the glow with footage of his speeches about how clean his doctrine was. Someone else posted a recipe for orange bread with a little joke about how to keep the peel from bitterness. 2 hands can fix what 100 voices deny. Marker 2. Kestrel said, "He's pressing again." "We'll hold," Jay said. "We'll hold," I echoed, because sometimes echoes are not lazy. They are necessary courage. Pressure built in the numbers. Our fuel dipped. The coolant fans in the aft compartments were singing loud enough that techs put in ear baffles. A tiny panel in hydroponics rattled until a trainee wedged a folded sock under its edge and taped it in place with the steady seriousness of someone doing their very best. On tender 11th, a grandmother hummed without rhythm, and a child kicked in a dream. "Admiral," Raffi said suddenly, "I know this isn't the time, but thank you." For what I asked, eyes still on the drift. For telling me to keep my head up, he said. "I'm looking at the numbers like they are faces. It helps." "Good," I said. Numbers are people that forgot to be loud. Someone has to stay human while the metal sings. Praetor Quell hesitated again. He widened a degree, then narrowed again. He wanted to both keep face and keep us. The drift lit and dimmed like the tide. "Admiral," Kestrel said, "if we choose to, we can end this now with minimal harm. Our EW can invert the phase once more and knock his middle line sensors blind for a minute. In that minute, we sprint, and we leave his sermon unchallenged." Jay said, "Or we finish the lesson." I said, "Not by burning him, by making him speak the truth himself." The plan that lived behind my eyes clicked one more notch into place. It was simple because all good plans are. "Kestrel, can we broadcast the exact harmonic that would save his haulers without letting his guns see us?" "Yes," the AI said after half a second. "We can send it as a maintenance advisory. Any junior officer would recognize it. He will have to acknowledge he used it," Jay said. "On record." "Send it," I said. "Label for the safety of crew." Raffi's fingertips hovered. Sent. We waited. The hull had the same quiet as a theater just before the house lights fall. Praetor Quell did not speak for a long 10 seconds. Then he said, not on a private channel, but to the same room where he had boasted all haulers. "Adjust inner banks per supplemental advisory." He didn't say who sent it. He didn't have to. The drift cooled. The glow softened. The public chat. So often a chaos. went still for a single beautiful breath, and then someone posted a clip of him 3 years ago, saying, "We do not learn from enemies. Air that tastes like rain is still just air." We slid toward marker 3. Our fuel dipped another curl. Me chair warmed and cooled beneath my palms, like the ship breathing with me. I thought about the arc of days, and how sometimes mercy needed teeth to stop being mistaken for surrender. I thought of the ledger board the old CO used to keep, not of kills, but of avoided deaths. I thought of the boy on Primrose with gel packs on his wrists, and the way he had laughed through a curse. I thought of Raffi's mother smelling oranges in a metal room, and making that smell enough of a home to keep her heart from breaking. "Admiral," Kestrel said, "if we hold 30 seconds more, we can pivot the convoy to the far edge of the drift and let the wake carry us. We'll lose the kites. We'll save 5 hours of fuel." "Do it," I said. "Kites have done their work." We pivoted. The ship hummed like a song I would never forget. The forward pane brightened with drift light and then dimmed as we moved out from under the spiderweb of emission. The timer on my wall, hours now, flipped to 00:30 for the next marker, then 29:28. Praetor Quell, frustrated by his own compromise, would reach for a new angle. Doctrine does not forgive itself for blinking. He had plan changers left in his pocket. He would throw them. We would catch them and fold them into a better law and make him carry the weight of his choices where everyone could see. I stood, the deck warm through my boots, the air cool on the back of my neck. The fleet's heart beat in the numbers rising up into the room. The drift ahead waited, the convoy tucked inside our shade like a child that knows when to run and when to rest. And then the compact fired a different shot. A tug at the edge of his line cut loose its own scuttlers and lit them like flares. Not under the tenders, but along the drift itself. A string of small suns meant to boil our fog and blind our lattice. It was not against his doctrine to light the world on fire, if he could call it terrain. The dust flowered with heat, and the stage we had chosen began to burn. The dust flowered with heat, and the stage we had chosen began to burn. Scuttler flares laced the drift like new suns on a string, boiling our fog, clawing at the edges of our angles. The hull under my boots took a higher, grittier tremor, and the vents shifted from cool to a cautious, sterile breath that tasted like quenched steel. "He's torching the field," Jay said, skin pale in the console glow. "He means to blind our reveals. He means to say, 'Terrain did it,' with a straight face." Ortega added, fingers already moving. "He'll call this weather." "We can't let weather be the alibi," I said. "Kestrel, can we make his flares draw their own map?" "Yeah," the AI replied, voice like rain on glass. "Every scuttler flare carries a service ping for rescue beacons. If we answer that ping with a loop back, only their numbers, we can make the drift right his choice in light." "Do it," I said, plain and public. The bridge dimmed half a shade as panels reallocated power. Far forward, a relief valve breathed with the softest sigh. Ozone pricked the nose sharp and clean and wrong in just the way that says keep your hands where you can see them. We do not fear a fire that tells the truth. Before we struck, I asked for Crew 2. The pane opened on Tender 3's laundry nook. A boy strung lines tight as violin wire and hung shirts that still smelled faintly of soap. A woman clipped them one-handed, the other arm in a sling, and smiled with the side of her mouth that didn't hurt. On Horizon's wake, a pair of gunners poured water over a coil housing until steam ghosted up and kissed the deckhead. One muttered a joke about tea, and the other rolled her eyes and kept pouring. On Primrose, The cook set a bowl of orange peels under a vent so the scent rode the air like a promise. In medical, the squad leader who'd been cut under the chin pressed a cold pack to his throat and asked the medic, hoarse but steady, if they had any honey. The medic produced a packet like a magician and said, "You owe me a song later." The camera paused on a chalk mark near a hatch. "Stay soft. Hit hard." Lubac responding. Kestrel said, "Drift writing now." The scuttler strung lights steadied into letters and bars, not in any one language, but in the language of numbers and minutes power drawn. Banks stressed. Temperatures at the edge of pain. We did not say murder. We didn't have to. His math did. Praetor Quell cut across the open band. Voice clipped. "This is manipulation. This is a mirror," I said. "If you don't like what it shows, turn away from the thing you're doing." Admiral Jay warned, "Heat on our forward sails is rising. We can hold, but not forever." "We don't need forever," I said. "We need enough. Do not let their haste steal your choices." The first hauler eased another degree without asking permission. Then the second went too. Quell barked orders big enough to fit on a theater poster. The haulers listened to the numbers humming under their hands. "Marker 3 complete," Kestrel reported. Public sentiment trending away from Quell's doctrine in 63 sectors. Insurance guilds issuing provisional review language. "Good," I said. "Give the guilds a way to climb down and call it prudence." Praetor's middle line is altering posture, Ortega said. Missile barges angling to sweep the drift clean with a broad thermal wash. "He wants to erase the writing," Jay said. "Then we write deeper," I said. Kestrel. "Can we seed the drift with condensers, little ice kisses, to drink his heat and sparkle when they've done it?" "Yes," Kestrel said. "We can repurpose coolant pods from the aft bays. Crew will carry them in suits." "That's a burn," Ortega said. "They'll feel it." "Ask for volunteers," I said, "but don't call it heroism. Call it work." The intercom clicked with a dozen voices at once. "Sign me," said a bosun. "I grew up in hot places," said a welder. "I once ate ice off a rail for a dare," said a pilot. And someone laughed for the first time in 10 minutes. Suits thudded in lockers. Seals hissed shut. Helmet glass creaked like old ice. Kestrel counted them without counting aloud. "Teams out," the AI said, almost a whisper. "Pods away." The hull took a different tone for a moment, the skeletal clink of lines handling brisk in vacuum. Through the forward pane, our people looked like small, busy shadows against a sky of burning dust. Each pod they set left a tiny wake of cold that glittered when the flare washed over it. Holding fast is not the same as standing still. Quell pushed the thermal wash. The drift flamed and then fizzled against our planted cold. The pattern didn't erase, it deepened. It was like trying to wipe ink with a wet thumb. He made more of a smear to read. "Admiral," Rafi said, "message from Tender 11. My mother says the oranges smell like they're fresh now." He blinked hard and didn't apologize for it. "Tell her we're nearly through," I said. "And tell her to save the peels. We'll make marmalade." Jay huffed a laugh he didn't have time for. The vents shifted again. Cooler now. My wrists felt the change like a blessing. The armrest under my palm was slick with sweat I hadn't noticed leaving. Praetor is launching a Corvette flight to scoop our condensers. Ortega said he wants to make us the villain, stealing coolant from relief. "We didn't," I said. "We borrowed from our own ribs." "Public will not care about nuance if he controls the shot," Jay said. "Then we give them a better one," I said. "Narration. Push a split screen our crew planting pods. Our medbay cooling burns. Label the pods as Fleet Reserve Coolant. Account 44B. No sermon. Raffi said. A chatterboard line scrolled beneath with guild signatures I recognized. Kestrel read the emotions the way meteorologists read wind. Opinion hardening. The AI said, not against us. Against the idea of clocks with guns. Out loud numbers beat quiet threats. We rode the drift's shoulder and bled the heat into the sea we had salted with work. Our fuel ticked lower. New vents spun up aft with a throaty whine that rattled the utility ladder near the bridge and sent a little shiver up through the deck. Someone tightened a rung with a torque wrench. The click-clack carried into the room as a steadying metronome. Admiral, Ortega said, we can put a lid on the drift and skate, or we can make him put his name on what comes next. Name. I said, we didn't come to be clever. We came to teach. Kestrel's voice was very soft now but certain. Then we offer the reverse ultimatum. Jay tipped his head. We flip his clock to a pledge. Yes, Kestrel said. 1 minute to issue a public safety directive rescinding hostage-taking as a means of enforcement, or we publish the full ledger of his heat budgets and who paid them in burns. We make his own doctrine sign against itself. Raffi looked at me, eyes wide. He'll call us extortionists. He's the one with the detonators. I said, we have minutes in math. Write it. Raffi wrote. The sentence was 9 words and wore no extra jewels. 1 minute to rescind. We are counting in light. He stamped it with the simple crest of a convoy, a loaf, a seed, a drop of water. The timer in the corner of the forward wall flipped to Zerso in that small square. In that narrow breath, the world felt the stretch of a bowstring. Every law worth having starts as a choice. Praetor Quell stared at us and did not blink. His face was a cliff cut clean by a river that refused to be impressed. He was a man who had learned that pausing made others flinch first. He had not learned what to do when the pause spoke back. Harriers, lock down the convoy, he said to his own line. Too fast. Haulers, hold corridor. Scuttlers. He stopped himself. But the stopping was a word we could all read. 30 seconds, Raffi said, barely breathing. Kestrel whispered, public node moderators are doing nothing. They want to see if he chokes on it. 20, Jay counted. Ortega's hands hovered over countermeasures he hoped not to use. His knuckles were slick. A drop fell and spattered his slate, and he didn't wipe it. 10, I said. Quell swallowed, and the room saw it, he said, to the same audience that had watched him braid his doctrine into other men's days. The Harrow Compact rescinds hostage-taking as a tool of blockade enforcement in this and adjacent sectors. Scuttlers will no longer be fitted to civilian hulls. Silence arrived like a bell. The drift dimmed on its own. Light burning out of itself like a fever breaking. Then the chat flooded with 1,000 small, uncoordinated joys, none of them ours to own. All of them music a farmer typing in caps by accident. An insurer saying noted with a relief so dry it made me grin. A child pasting a looped or badly drawn loaf of bread. We make room and the world finds its feet. Marker 4, unnecessary. Kestrel said, he moved. It is done. Not done. Jay said, he can still shoot. He can, I said, but he won't. Not with the room full. Quell stared 2 seconds more. A man who had just been asked to shake hands with a better future and did not know what to do with his other hand. Then he flicked his eyes to some unseen advisor and said, convoy may proceed. He tried to wrap it in ceremony. It sounded like a man scraping rust off a hinge. Convoy, I said on the fleet net. We proceed. The hull shifted to the long glide that means a ship is leaving danger because crew have made that dangerous exit real. The vents cooled. The metal smell lightened. My pulse clicked down one notch and decided not to race back up. Cost, I said, because the ledger is not complete until you total it. Fuel at 62%, Kestrel said. Reserve pods expended. 9 burns treated. 1 severe but stable. 2 drones lost. 1 sprained knee and 1 cracked visor replaced in time. We will need a new ladder rung on B-deck. We'll weld one, Ortega said. His smile looked like a man who had been holding his breath since he learned what breathing was for. In the mess, on Primrose. The cook held up a tray, and crew took buns with hands that shook. On Tender 11th, a woman held a packet of stale biscuits and cried the kind of quiet that leaves no red in the eyes and all the salt in the throat. Be kind to the hands that saved you. We crossed the far edge of the drift into clear space. The convoy tucked tighter, like birds learning the shape of a new sky. Our fleet's geometry returned to a balanced lattice of escort positions and patrol arcs, and I could finally hear the small sounds that mean you have not turned into a weapon by forgetting you are a person. A throat cleared and not stifled, a wrist shaking out a cramp, a chair creaking under an honest weight. Admiral, Kestrel said after a pause that meant the AI had to decide how to phrase it. A message from the Guild of Transit Insurers. They request a deposition of events and a framework for future corridors. They want us to write the policy they will pretend they invented. Jay said, good humor beneath his tired. We'll write it. I said, plain and brief. And we'll publish it before they stamp it so everyone knows where it grew. Rafi's console cast his cheek in sugar glass green. Admiral, he said softly, my mother asks if we have any spare yeast. Tell her we'll trade for stories. I said, 2 stories per jar. Slow peace is still peace. We set a line toward Neris Minor, famine world #1 on the convoy's list. The road would be long, even if no one else tried to make it shorter. But the room felt like a deck after a storm, wet, scarred, and alive. 3 hours into that quiet, a spark popped back in the net. The Compact's Harriers fell behind like sulking children and peeled away. Quell's line lagged, turned, and made itself a rumor on our scopes. I let the watch rotate. I took off my gloves and folded them small. The leather smelled like sweat and a little like home. That was when an alarm that wasn't an alarm ticked in Kestrel's voice. Admiral, the AI said, Harrow skunkworks are scattering a whisper down the rim. Small boats, unflagged, not a blockade. Not quite. What is it, I asked, the old cold coming back as a sensible chill. A test, Kestrel said. He cannot use scuttlers, but he can use men with cutters who say they are not soldiers. Deniable pressure. Plan changer number 3, Jay said. He can't let the doctrine die quietly. No doctrine worth less than a man ever does. I said, we keep teaching. Be ready to teach twice when they fail the first time. We did not pivot the whole fleet. That would be the theater he wanted. We detached a skein of escorts with names like Small Promises Plover, Dawnload, Honest Wait, and laid a net of law where his whisper had hoped to slide through. We did not hide the net. We painted it in a yellow so bright the color seemed to hum. Civilian vignette. I asked Rafi out loud, surprising myself with the ritual of it. Before we step, the pane obligingly swung to a corridor in the convoy's schoolboat, a narrow place with paper taped to bulkheads. Children drew pictures of ships with big windows and bread bigger than heads. A teacher pointed to a map with a pencil worn almost to the wood and said, this is where the hot place was, and this is where the cold came and drank it, and this is where your parents didn't blink. In a lower deck, A coupler tech showed a trainee how to seat a seal with a soft twist and said, "Feel for the click. Don't look. In the galley." Raffi's mother zested an orange with a grin that looked like a wound healing. We laced our escorts through the skiffs like thread through bad cloth. The skiffs tried to shrug. We did not pull. We held. And they ran out of shrug. Boarding lines. Ortega said, "Voice back in the place where work lives. Non-lethal kit. Cameras rolling." A man on a skiff raised a cutter and froze with the very human realization that he had no helmet seal, and we had the courtesy to notice. "Set it down." Jay said on open line, "You go home warm if you set it down." He set it down. Others did too. Quell's whisper broke into mutters, then into shrugs, then into empty space. "We don't need a victory parade when people get home." We made Narration Minor by a dawn that looked like spilled silver. The convoy's tenders glided into the high lanes like weight had finally remembered to be gentle. On the downlink, a city's lights blinked in an order that said, "We are still here." We did not descend to applause. We descended to work. Cranes sang. Ramps thumped. The scent of warm grain climbed into ships like a tide. The hull hummed a lullaby in a key-only hard metal nose. The vents blew cool. And someone sneezed. And someone laughed at the sneeze because it sounded like a puppy. The guild's request returned, now with 7 stamp seals and 3 frightened smiles. Framework for corridors. The message said, "We are ready." "Write it." I told Kestrel and Jay together. Short. True. We wrote 8 lines that would turn into 800 pages in a month, but that would always point back here. No clocks on civilian hulls. No scuttlers anywhere near food. All corridors posted in plain language. All heat budgets public within 1 hour of pressure. All haulers may override orders when crew safety crosses a line they can feel. Fleet escort protocols teach before they shove. Insurers calculate on what happened, not what a man wanted to happen. Witness is a shield, and beneath it, I wrote in charcoal, "We teach by numbers and remember by ledgers, never by collars." Public nodes affixed the lines to the top of the day's feed. The room watched a tired planet bite bread and cry. 1,000 quiet votes happened, and none of them were wrong. Your hand on a scale is heavier than your gun. Quell sent one last message. It was private, and it did not have to be. "You humiliated me," he said. "No." I said, "You put your doctrine in a light, and it didn't like its own shadow. You will regret making enemies." He said, "You will regret mistaking neighbors." I said, "And cut the line." After the deliveries, we turned the fleet toward the station where the guild wanted to shake hands. The hull settled to the long, easy tune of speed, without sprint. The vents smelled faintly like oranges now, because Raffi's mother had taken pity on us and left a small bowl near an intake without asking any captain for permission. Kestrel said, "Admiral, this is the part where I ask you if you want sleep." "I want numbers first." I said, "Ledger updated." The AI replied, "Lives lifted 952 on tenders and 5,000 projected on Narration Minor by week's end. Injuries 12, all breathing. Losses 2 drones, 1 ladder rung, 1 lifeboat, 2 bags of coolant pods. Fuel 61 to station, 46 to rim. Repairs needed minor skin work, 1 coil brace realignment, and a new door latch on a mess locker." "Good," I said. "We'll buy a rope and ring for the locker and call it a joke." Teaching is a habit, not a heroic pose. We reached Far Ledger Station with a fleet that looked tired and right. The docking arms kissed the hull with the gentleness of practiced hands. Station air came aboard with the taste of old tin and coffee, and crew walked through it with the swagger of people who had forgotten swagger and were trying it on again. The guild convened in a room with windows even in the walls, because market men like to see their own faces. We did not bow. We said our 8 lines. They nodded and stamped and wrote their parchments. We made sure every lens in the room could see a simple table, a loaf torn in half, an orange peel curled like a question mark, a chalk mark reading tomorrow. The station's public ledger added 1 line beneath the tally of shipments and accidents and births. Harrow Compact Ultimatum Doctrine rescinded in Sectors 3 through 7. Hostage fittings outlawed across public corridors. Enforcement privileges narrowed to inspection only under witness. Entered by hand. Witnessed by many. Blockade lights dimmed. The tally board clicked to 0. Our sails cooled to pewter. I stood for a minute at the window and watched tug pilots play slow tag with cargo. All elbow and grace. The hull under me was quiet enough that I could hear my own pulse and not mistake it for the ship's. The air had the soft damp of many people breathing the same space with ease. I spoke. To my crew. To the convoy. To the room that had watched and judged and, for once, chosen a better hunger. We came to a clock, and we didn't learn to love ticking. We learned to listen for the breaths between ticks. We met a doctrine that believed fear could teach faster than patience, and we made patience carry teeth sharp enough to make room. We kept our hands open until opening meant holding, and then we held in public where anyone who wanted to unlearn could watch. We will carry the burns we earned and the fuel we spent into the next corridor as proof that mercy is not free but worth the ledger line. When they light the field to blind us, we will answer with numbers and neighbors. When they whisper around the edges, we will paint law in colors loud enough to embarrass timid hearts into courage. If they ask what we call this, tell them we call it enough. We will keep teaching until the clocks forget how to threaten.